Today we're going to be making 2 Harry Potter themed recipes. And the first is going to be Hagrid's rock cakes, and the second is going to be the Gurdyroot infusion that Xenophilius Lovegood serves to Harry, Ron, and Hermione in the 7th book. If you don't know what rock cakes are, they're a lot like a scone, but they're much easier to make. The batter is much more loose, so we can just spoon them onto the baking sheet rather than having to roll them and shape them and cut them. So to start, we just need some plain flour. And to that, we're going to add some sugar and baking powder. Mix that around, and then we can add our butter. You can blend all of that in with a fork, or you can rub the butter into the flour with clean hands. Either way, you want to do that until you have a nice sandy texture. Now, if you're using unsalted butter, you'll need to add a bit of salt at this point, but I use salted butter, so I didn't need it. Then we're going to add some milk and vanilla extract. You can also substitute non-dairy versions of the milk and the butter. That's what I've done here. So mix that until it just comes together, and then you're going to add in your dried fruit. Now this is where you can customize. Traditionally, rock cakes are made with dried fruit, but if you wanted to add in some chocolate chips or chopped nuts, I won't stop you. I kept it simple, and I just added in some dried cranberries and chopped apricot. Now stir those in until they're just combined, and if we mix it too much here, we're not going to have nice tender rock cakes. So grab a tray and line it with baking paper. And then you're going to grab another fork and spoon out chunks of your batter onto your tray. Now, Hagrid is half giant, so I figured he'd make these pretty large, and I ended up with 4 big rock cakes out of this batter, but you could easily get 6 to 8 normal sized. So you want it to stay rough around the edges, because those craggy bits are going to get nice and crisp in the oven, while the center will stay nice and soft. So if you're going for these big rock cakes, you're going to want to bake these for 20 to 25 minutes at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Now if you're going for smaller ones, you're going to want to check them at 15 minutes. You'll know they're done when they're nice and brown around the edges. So take those out of the oven and let them cool for a few minutes, and then you can dig in. You can see that these have a more cakey texture than a scone, which is why I assume they're called rock cakes, but they do taste very similar to a scone. And they're great with butter and jam, or just on their own. If you want to make these like Hagrid does, you're going to lower your temperature to 300 degrees after they're already baked, and you're going to bake them for 30 more minutes. And this is what you get. This is very crunchy on the outside and impossibly dry on the inside. So if you do make this version, make sure you have a cup of tea waiting. So these are Hagrid's rock cakes, which I would argue are superior to scones. But let's turn our attention to the Gurdyroot infusion. So Gurdyroots are hard to find in typical shops, and if you can't find them, purple cabbage will work as well. That's what I have here, and I just cut that in half, cut the core out, and then chopped up a quarter of it into thin strips. In the book, it's said that this drink tastes like bogeys, and I don't really want my drink to taste like that, so I'm also going to infuse some pineapple into this. But any fruit will work, and you're going to want to end up with 2 cups of your chopped fruit. And you can also use frozen fruit if you'd like. Then we're going to put those in a pot and cover them with 5 cups of water. And we're going to boil this for 30 minutes to infuse the water with our Gurdyroot. Then take it off the boil, and we're going to need to add some sugar. I added a little bit of ginger syrup just to add another root into the mix, and then I also added some regular sugar, but the ginger syrup is totally optional. You can also use honey or maple syrup or any sweetener of your choice. So we're going to strain this, and then we're going to let it cool. And once it's cooled, you can grab yourself a glass with some ice. Add in your Gurdyroot infusion and you can drink it just like this. But you might notice that in the movies, this drink is blue. So I'm going to take us back to elementary school science class. We're going to turn this drink blue with baking soda. Red cabbage has a chemical in it that acts as a litmus test. So if you add an acid to your red cabbage, it will turn pink. And in this case, our fruit is our acid. But if you add a base to it, it will turn blue. Now, this was pretty cool, but I will say that the amount of baking soda I had to use did negatively affect the taste. But I'm still going to call this a win, because it did not taste very good in the books either. So I would recommend drinking this without baking soda, but if you still want that blue color, you can add in a bit of food dye. This is a pretty nice drink, and you really can't taste the cabbage. It's almost like a fruit-infused water. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.